Hey, buddy. Hey, Finn. Well, I wanted to talk about the movie Watchmen. A couple of the characters in that movie. I'll start with one of the first characters you see in the movie, the comedian. First time you watch the movie, you don't really know how to feel about the fight, you know? You want him to live because someone's invading his home. And he seems like he knows his shit and he's ready for it, but he still can't take this superpowered assassin. But it's a way better fight the second time around, even though it's a beautiful fight, probably one of the best fights in like film history, I'd say. Not to give that movie too much credit, you know, I'm not trying to it's my favorite movie or anything, but I think it is kind of ahead of its time. But back to the comedian. When you find out what an asshole he is, it makes that second time watching him get the shit beat out of him so much better, you know? Because, you know, he's such an asshole. You find out all the horrible things he did. Find out that he's a murderer and a rapist, and the whole time he's being hailed as a hero. And so, yeah, everybody's pretty glad to see him go flying through some fucking plate glass. If you watch the motion comic, where they turn the comic into something of a cartoon, almost everything was done better. Like, people who didn't get backstories had backstories. And they show in the movie that... Okay, spoilers by the fucking way. If anybody wants to watch something about Watchmen and doesn't expect spoilers this fucking year, they should expect them. He basically can't tell his daughter that, you know, he's her dad because he's a fucking monster. That's like the only thing he can do for her, basically, is not let her know that they're related. And so, it would, they kind of make him a little bit sympathetic, but not in the same way they do in the motion comic, where she throws, his daughter comes up and throws wine in his face, and, you know, basically just calls him out, like, yeah, you raped my mother, like, you're a fucking douchebag and all that shit. And he says it only happened once. And she, like, dwells on it as, like, so, like, it would matter if it happened, like, 10 times or whatever. But really, he's trying to hide the fact that they had sex later on, conceiving her, like, not through, like, you know, forced, like, but I mean, like, they actually had not a relationship, maybe a relationship. They don't completely explain it, but there was something more in the motion comic, where in the movie he's completely unredeemable, and he's still pretty fucking horrible in the goddamn motion comic. But there's a scene they cut out where, or no, I think they have that in the movie, where he goes to his arch nemesis and he's crying. Can't remember if that's in the movie or not, but, you know, it makes him a little bit sympathetic, but not to the point where you're not glad to see him die. Like, I mean, his death at the beginning of the movie is way better the second time around, I maintain. Now let's move on to douchebag number 2. That would be Dr. Manhattan. Now, he's not sadistic like the comedian. He falls closer to... I'll just skip ahead a little bit. Our third douchebag, Vite, I believe is his name. Fuck's his name? You know, the blonde douchebag, the fucking rich guy who orchestrated everything. He loses touch with humanity. I'm skipping around. Dr. Manhattan loses touch with humanity and just basically doesn't give a shit. Like, he basically explains that he knows what's going to happen. And I think the best example of him knowing what's going to happen and doing nothing to stop it is when he wants to, like, gangbang his girlfriend. He makes copies of himself. And she's like, what the fuck? You know, like, it freaked her out. And he's like, well, I thought you would enjoy that. but he already, well, no, not at that point, but I don't know if he said it at that point or not, but it's established that he basically can see the future. So he knew he was going to creep her out, and he still did it. Or like the argument on Mars where it's like, oh, by the end of this conversation you will be in tears. It's like, it's a pain. He's a fucking pain. He's just a fucking loser. Like, I hate Dr. Manhattan. He is a douchebag. I wish people would, like, call it out more. Like, yeah, sure, he's, like, acts like a god, but I mean, like, he doesn't... Okay, the comedian gets his face slashed up by a pregnant girl who's going to leave in Vietnam, and so he just shoots her. And even the comedian calls him out for it. Like, you could have stopped me. You know, like, you could have turned the gun into snowflakes or the bullets into steam or something. But you didn't. But what really bothers me is he didn't do anything after that. Like, they don't even try to establish whether or not he ever tried to bring someone back to life. But I think that would have been a really good opportunity for him to, like, impregnate the comedian. You know, like, well, I can save the baby, I just have to fuse your bodies together. You know, like, that would have redeemed him a little bit more. It would have kept him on the path of being, like, above, like, doing, like, whatever he felt without morals. Because, like, well, that's not really what he did. He just, like, oh, he went and blew up Vietnamese people because the president told him to do it. That pissed me off. It's like, oh, I'm omnipotent and they're shaping me into something. No one can make him do anything. He's just a bitch who whines about how he can't do anything. It's like, I'm supposed to choose a symbol, but it'll be one that I respect. So he chooses, like, it's like one atom of hydrogen, blah, 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 bullshit. It's like something from science. And it's like, no, it's not like something from humanity. Like, not science isn't from humanity, but I mean, like, the only thing that he respects is, like, the physical mechanics of things. You know? Like, he doesn't give a shit about human beings. But, to go back on that, he does have his speech on Mars, which I like and hate at the same time, because he brings up the fact that every life is a miracle because of 100 trillion sperm or however many have to compete for one life. And the fact that not only do all those sperm compete for that one life, but that the one combination that would come out would be who we are. But he was using the example of, you know, his girlfriend, because she's finding out, like, he basically zaps her and gives her a piece of, you know, future universe sight, or she basically just looks back and sees one of her own memories more clearly, and realizes that her mom admits to her adopted dad that, yeah, she did have sex with the comedian, and so the comedian is her father. And Dr. Manhattan realized that the fact that the comedian and I can't remember what the other character was, Silk Spectre or some shit like that. The comedian and her mother coming together to create her out of all the odds, out of all the possible combinations that could have happened, was a miracle. But then it's all kind of thrown away because... It's not thrown away, but it pisses you off again because they get back to Earth like, oh, I'm finally going to give a shit. And instead of doing something, he just kind of accepts that the world was set up to look like he killed it. Like, not only is he willing to accept blame, but he's willing to let the person go who killed, like, basically I think it was, like, every major city, or maybe it was just New York. I don't even remember what the fuck happened. I gotta be honest, I saw the movie a while ago, but I still remember, like, a lot of it. Like, key plot points. Big-ass disaster. People died. But he comes in after Veidt has fucking beaten up his girlfriend after he just caught the fucking bullet. And, he comes in like, his giant form after Veidt had fucking, like, zapped him the same way he was created, so he, like, just comes back together. And then Veidt, like, turns on all these screens, and he's like, look, I saved the world, I made everyone so scared they don't want to fight each other. And if Dr. Manhattan saw that as a viable solution, why wouldn't he have just did it himself? they kind of ruin that because it's supposed to be that they make it look like an alien attacks Earth, so there would be no nation to point a finger at. When Dr. Manhattan does it, everyone can point their finger at fucking America. But why couldn't Dr. Manhattan just tell everyone that Veidt did it, and then everyone could point their finger at fucking him? Because if they're going to change it so it's like, oh, it can just be any guy who did it, like, why not make it fucking Veidt? Why did it have to be Dr. Manhattan? I guess because he's a godlike character. But I mean, like, when you make it an alien, it's mysterious. But when you make it Dr. Manhattan, people are under threat of a character that's so powerful. I would assume that they would be completely crippled by fear instead of united, you know, to fight an alien race or to just not fight each other. But that's just kind of my opinion there. But yeah, Dr. Manhattan is just such a douche. He's like going on like he basically comes back to life, does meet his old girlfriend there, and you know, they're together for a long time after that, and then just totally starts cheating on her. And his line there is, she accuses me of chasing jailbait. No, she stated the fact that you were chasing jailbait. I love that. He's a super being, and he's totally like statutory rape all the way. But who's gonna persecute a guy who has all the powers of God? I figured that was kind of the point there, but doesn't make him any less of a cunt. Now let's move on to our third douchebag, and I don't know what order to really place him in. I mean, like in levels of douchiness. I think it's a personal opinion thing. And that's Veidt, because he orchestrates like this whole thing, and I think it kind of comes back to the whole one of the main arguments that people have for Batman is that couldn't he just fix everything with his money instead of, like, you know, going around doing this superhero, or in this case